At 4:12 a.m., officers from the West Haven Police Department responded to a residential security alert at a home on Alder Ridge Lane. The system had flagged unauthorized access to the garage, followed by a failure in carbon monoxide detection sensors. Upon arrival, the responding units found the garage door shut and the front entrance slightly open. Inside the garage, the engine of a silver sedan was still running. The vehicle belonged to 34-year-old Emily Dawson. Her body was discovered on the floor, positioned between the rear of the vehicle and the entrance to the home. She was fully clothed, with no visible wounds, no sign of a struggle, and no indication of forced entry. Paramedics confirmed death by asphyxiation due to carbon monoxide poisoning. Her husband, Daniel Dawson, was missing. Their 8-year-old daughter was found asleep inside the house, unharmed. At 6:38 a.m., Daniel's own vehicle was located abandoned at a remote access road near Oak Ridge State Forest, 11 miles from the scene. Inside were his wallet, mobile phone, and a sealed plastic bag containing cash and prepackaged food supplies. Initial impressions suggested a planned escape and an intentionally staged crime scene. By sunrise, what began as a quiet domestic emergency had shifted to an active homicide investigation, and the man once seen as a devoted father had vanished into the woods. West Haven, Indiana, was a quiet suburban town located just 40 minutes outside Indianapolis. With a population under 25,000, it was known for its low crime rate, uniform neighborhoods, and routine-laden community life. Most residents worked in regional business parks or nearby logistics firms. Violent crime was virtually non-existent. Daniel Dawson, 36, had lived in West Haven his entire life. Employed as a supply chain coordinator for a mid-sized logistics company, he kept a stable work schedule and had no disciplinary record. His background was clean. No arrests, no prior investigations, no police interaction on file. Emily Dawson, 34, was a former substitute teacher who had transitioned to full-time parenting after the birth of their daughter. She had no known history of mental illness or medical complications. Her presence in the community was limited to school events, grocery runs, and brief neighborly exchanges. The couple had been married for 11 years and lived in the same single-story home since their wedding. There had been no public disturbances, no filed complaints, and no indication of domestic conflict. To neighbors and co-workers, the Dawsons appeared ordinary, quiet, predictable, unremarkable. That perception would not survive the investigation that followed. On the evening of March 1, 2023, Emily Dawson returned home from a local pharmacy at approximately 6:48 p.m. A neighbor's security camera confirmed her arrival and showed her entering the home alone, carrying a small paper bag. She did not leave the residence again. At 9:17 p.m., data pulled from the home's smart energy meter showed a spike in power usage within the garage, consistent with the vehicle ignition and overhead lighting being activated. The garage door remained closed. Internal motion sensors within the garage triggered twice between 9:18 and 9:25 p.m. No further movement was recorded inside that zone for the remainder of the night. At 4:12 a.m. on March 2nd, a low-voltage fault triggered the security alert system. It registered a malfunction in the carbon monoxide detector and a delayed signal to the home network. The monitoring company alerted authorities. Officers arrived at 4:27 a.m. There were no signs of forced entry. The home's interior was orderly. The garage door was closed, but the engine of a 2018 silver sedan was still running. Emily Dawson's body was discovered near the driver's side rear quarter panel. She was positioned on her left side, face turned away from the car, and unresponsive. First responders recorded high levels of carbon monoxide upon entry. Emergency medical personnel confirmed that Emily had been deceased for multiple hours. No external injuries were visible. Her purse and mobile phone were not recovered at the scene. The garage's built-in carbon monoxide detector had been disconnected from the main circuit breaker. Wire insulation was stripped cleanly, indicating the use of precision tools. The home's generator backup system, which would normally trigger alerts, had been manually disabled. A kitchen drawer containing the household's toolkit was found open. A pair of wire cutters and a multimeter were missing. In the bathroom, trash, officers located nitrile gloves and a length of stripped copper wire. Both items were bagged as evidence. Inside the home, Emily's 8-year-old daughter was found asleep in her bedroom. She was unharmed and unaware of the activity. Officers transferred her to Child Protective Services. By 5:15 a.m., Daniel Dawson's absence had been confirmed. A bolo was issued by 5:32 a.m. At 6:38 a.m., his second vehicle, a 2005 gray SUV, was located parked at the edge of Oak Ridge State Forest. It had been locked from the outside. The keys were found inside a duffel bag in the rear seat. Also, recovered were Daniel's wallet, phone, and $3,500 in cash. The phone had been reset to factory settings. A preliminary autopsy confirmed Emily Dawson's cause of death as carbon monoxide poisoning. No sedatives or toxins were found in her system. The medical examiner placed the time of death between 10:00 p.m. and 1:00 a.m. Air samples from her lungs confirmed high saturation consistent with a sealed, enclosed exposure environment. Investigators collected all electronic devices in the residence. A reset work laptop registered to Daniel was recovered from the bedroom closet. Although most data had been wiped, residual system logs from the home's router showed that the device had accessed DIY instruction videos related to electrical panel bypassing and carbon monoxide poisoning within the 48 hours preceding the murder. Search terms identified in browser metadata included CO poisoning in garage, CO detector disable, and how long until unconscious from carbon monoxide. Police also collected data from the garage vehicle's onboard system. It showed that the car had been started and left running for over 6 hours. Its cabin air settings had been switched to recirculate, increasing the internal gas concentration. Rate. The garage door showed no record of having been opened between activation and officer arrival. A search of Daniel's recent purchases showed an online order placed 10 days prior. 1 replacement CO sensor, 1 garage door manual switch, override, and a bulk package of nitrile gloves. The items had been delivered and signed for by Daniel Dawson. By 10 a.m., law enforcement officially classified the death as a homicide. A warrant for Daniel's arrest was issued and distributed statewide. By noon, search teams had entered the forest. Tracking dogs followed a trail briefly before losing it near a riverbed. Officers expanded the search zone but found no sign of Daniel. At the crime scene, investigators found no indicators of outside involvement. There were no fingerprints other than those of household residents. No foreign DNA was present. No evidence of a struggle, and no signs of forced entry. What had initially appeared to be an isolated domestic tragedy was now viewed as a controlled and methodically executed act. The tools had been prepared. The sensors had been disabled. The exposure had been timed, and the exit had been planned in advance. Within hours of confirming Emily Dawson's death as a homicide, investigators from the West Haven Police Department launched a coordinated search and evidence recovery operation. Daniel Dawson was now the sole suspect, and priority shifted to locating him while securing all potential digital and physical evidence that could establish motive, method, and timeline. The home was placed under continuous scene control. Forensic teams conducted a detailed scan of all living areas. In the garage, the main fuse box had been tampered with. The carbon monoxide detector was found disconnected with stripped copper wiring and clean tool marks on the terminals. Power to the sensor had been rerouted to a dummy switch. Tests confirmed the bypass was intentional. In a basement cabinet, investigators recovered a utility box containing labeled wiring, replacement circuit breakers, and a packet of hand-drawn schematics. One of the sketches matched the Dawson home's circuit layout. A fingerprint from Daniel was recovered from the tape holding the diagram. Additional items found in the trash, nitrile gloves, used alcohol wipes, and a burnt matchbook, were all consistent with efforts to avoid DNA and trace residue. Attention turned to Daniel's electronic footprint. His work laptop had been reset, but forensic recovery tools restored residual browser cache and metadata from the router logs. Key access points included searches for how to disable carbon monoxide alarm, how to run a car engine silently, and how long before CO becomes fatal. The data confirmed the device was active during the hours of 9:00 p.m. to midnight on the night of the murder, after Emily had returned home. Network logs showed a large download had occurred 3 days earlier from a private forum discussing garage asphyxiation. Investigators also recovered a second personal laptop from a locked cabinet in the garage loft. This device was intact. It contained saved surveillance clips, screenshots of doorbell camera footage, and a spreadsheet labeled Event Log. Entries included notations of Emily's comings and goings, timestamps of when she left the house, and several references to Carter, a name not previously included in the case file. Investigators ran a background check and quickly identified Thomas Carter, the Dawson family's next-door neighbor. A contractor by trade, Carter had performed maintenance work on the Dawsons' property the previous year. His name appeared in Emily's cloud-synced contacts. Message metadata revealed consistent communication between the two, particularly over the past month. Further inspection of the saved surveillance content on Daniel's device revealed footage of Thomas Carter entering and exiting the Dawson property late at night on multiple occasions, while Daniel was confirmed to be at work. Time-stamped video from a front-facing camera captured Carter visiting the home on February 15th, 22nd, and 26th. Investigators obtained a warrant for Carter's home and devices. His phone showed encrypted messages sent to an alias that forensics examiners later matched to a masked profile used on Daniel's laptop. While the exact content of the conversations could not be recovered, metadata revealed file transfers, shared locations, and a recurring schedule that aligned with Emily's weekly activity. In the shared folder cache, police recovered image thumbnails of private documents, screenshots of bank transfers, and one file labeled ED Split, dated February 25th, 5 days before Emily's death. Daniel's financial records were also examined. In mid-February, he had withdrawn $3,500 in cash and purchased outdoor gear, including a thermal tarp, survival food packs, and a rechargeable water filter. These items were consistent with what was found in his abandoned SUV. Surveillance footage from an outdoor sporting goods store confirmed Daniel's presence during the transaction. He appeared calm, alone, and carried a shopping list on paper. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of the Dawson home's smart thermostat showed the garage temperature had been manually adjusted to maintain ambient warmth, slowing gas dissipation and ensuring higher saturation during engine operation. The setting had been changed at 9:19 p.m. on March 1st. Law enforcement expanded the digital search. Cloud backups linked to Daniel's Apple ID revealed a deleted folder named Final. Auto-saved recovery files included handwritten logs, route, maps of wooded trails, and a calendar entry marked 0301 0300 HERs. Exit. Detectives concluded that Daniel had been planning a controlled act of disappearance following the murder. The selection of the crime method, the scene staging, and the timing all pointed to premeditation. Thomas Carter was brought in for questioning. He denied knowledge of any plan to harm Emily, but admitted to an ongoing relationship. His phone contained notes that aligned with Daniel's surveillance logs. Shared entries included dates and coded labels that matched Daniel's event log. A photograph of Emily's car parked outside a motel was also recovered from Carter's deleted image cache. Investigators ruled that while Carter had not participated in the homicide, he had knowingly withheld information that could have prevented it. His involvement was upgraded from witness to person of interest in connection with obstruction. Meanwhile, the search for Daniel intensified. Drones equipped with thermal imaging were deployed over Oak Ridge State Forest. On the afternoon of March 6th, a remote heat signature led to a makeshift shelter constructed of branches and a thermal tarp. At 2:43 p.m., Daniel Dawson was apprehended without incident. He was found wearing layered clothing, carrying protein bars, and a notebook listing a schedule, calorie intake, and handwritten risk assessments. The notebook included a final entry dated March 1st. CO system bypassed. 0300, final prep. No. Return. He was transported to county holding. A full confession was not obtained at the time of arrest, but the evidence already assembled provided a complete reconstruction of the act, the planning, and the attempted escape. The crime was no longer a case of emotional breakdown. It was a timeline of deliberate choices, documented, executed, and concealed with precision. And behind it all was a marriage, a neighbor, and a secret that turned methodical. While the forensic case against Daniel Dawson was already strong, a routine review of cloud-synced backups from a decommissioned iPad introduced new layers to the investigation. The device, initially overlooked, had been stored in a desk drawer in the Dawson home office. Once unlocked and accessed through forensic software, it revealed a folder titled Confirm. The folder contained screenshots of emails, app-based, calendar invites, and dozens of private message logs from an encrypted texting service. These messages documented a detailed exchange between Daniel Dawson and an anonymous contact using the name TC. Timestamp, analysis, and cross-device. Syncing confirmed that TC referred to Thomas Carter, the Dawsons' next-door neighbor. The message logs indicated that Daniel had known about the affair longer than initially suspected. Their digital communication spanned nearly 4 months. The earliest messages dated back to early December of the previous year. The language used throughout the exchanges was guarded. No direct threats were made, but phrasing suggested covert planning. File attachments included location pins, shared photos, and route maps. Metadata analysis revealed that many of the messages were set to auto-delete, but cloud backups retained partial threads. The most critical of these showed Carter sending Daniel routine updates on Emily's whereabouts. These updates included references to locations and meeting times. On multiple occasions, they appeared to coordinate when Daniel would be away and when Carter would visit. A secondary shared document uncovered in Carter's phone, titled Window Plan, logged movement patterns, grocery trips, school, drop-offs, and intervals when Emily was alone. Investigators originally believed Daniel acted alone in planning the murder. However, this communication suggested Carter's awareness of Daniel's surveillance setup and Emily's routine, with both parties actively logging details. It also revealed that Carter had offered suggestions for handling the situation without escalation, including Emily moving away or requesting separation discreetly. The digital footprint painted a picture of two men aligned not by trust, but by silence. Investigators concluded that the surveillance, data collection, and isolation of the victim were coordinated steps, not spontaneous actions taken after discovery of the affair. Further developments came when investigators decrypted a previously unreadable storage device found in Daniel's second vehicle. The device had been encased in a waterproof pouch and hidden beneath the rear wheel well. Once accessed, it contained compressed audio files, receipts, and time-stamped voice memos. Among them was a 27-minute audio log recorded over 2 days. The recordings were not confessional in nature, but outlined Daniel's decision-making process. He described the process of researching various methods of removal, referencing asphyxiation, environmental controls, and the need for a silent solution. He detailed plans involving timeline testing, disabling alarm systems, and the use of garage airflow manipulation. The notes confirmed that the method used to kill Emily had been tested in small phases, including running the car in the closed, garage for brief intervals on prior nights, then ventilating the space to reset levels. In one of the final logs, he referenced Carter's failure to stop her as a catalyst. Investigators used this to establish Carter's complicity in suppressing action that could have prevented the death. Though not involved in the killing itself, Carter's prior knowledge, consistent data sharing, and silence after the plan became clear were used to strengthen the conspiracy charge. Simultaneously, forensic analysts completed a deep scan of Daniel's fitness tracking data. Though his phone had been wiped, his smartwatch retained stored movement logs. On the night of the murder, data recorded a full sequence of activities from 9 p.m. to 3:45 a.m. Steps tracked included walking from the bedroom to the garage repeatedly, using tools, and remaining motionless for over 2 hours afterward, consistent with him waiting for the carbon monoxide saturation to reach lethal levels. This physical data was mapped against his garage and home layout, providing precise verification of his movement and presence during the staging and execution of the crime. The movement logs also disproved any claim of dissociation or blackouts during the act. The final revelation came during reanalysis of Thomas Carter's home router logs. While he had claimed to have no contact with Daniel after February 26th, router data revealed that his IP address had accessed a GPS link sent from Daniel's masked email account just 48 hours before the murder. The GPS link pointed to the Dawson residence and included instructions to track Emily's car movement through the garage smart system. Investigators traced this to a short-lived script Daniel had programmed to monitor car ignition and door activity in real time. Access to that system required login credentials, which Carter had used. This indicated direct access to monitoring Emily's activity, even on the night prior to her death. While Carter did not physically aid in the murder, the evidence established that he enabled Daniel's surveillance operation, remained aware of the planning, and actively chose not to intervene. Prosecutors later amended charges against Carter to include willful obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit homicide. Though he maintained his claim of never intending harm, his digital footprint contradicted the claim of ignorance. By this stage, what had started as a case of suspected domestic violence had unraveled into a collaborative pattern of stalking, suppression, and targeted isolation, executed in calculated stages. Daniel Dawson didn't snap. He strategized. Thomas Carter didn't report. He participated, and Emily Dawson didn't fall victim to an emotional conflict. She was systematically removed from a scenario two men couldn't control. The trial of Daniel Dawson opened on May 22, 2023, inside West Haven County Court under heightened security. The courtroom was sealed to the public during portions of the proceedings due to the involvement of protected digital evidence and forensic data. By this point, investigators had compiled a case file that spanned over 200 pages, supported by digital footprints, physical evidence, metadata reconstructions, and timeline mapping. Daniel faced multiple charges: premeditated murder, conspiracy to commit homicide, obstruction of justice, tampering with a crime scene, and attempted evasion of arrest. The state presented a methodical account of the planning that took place in the weeks leading up to Emily Dawson's death, tracing every action with time-stamped verification. Prosecutors introduced surveillance videos Daniel had collected, screenshots of route maps, activity logs from Emily's movements, and detailed forensic evidence from the altered wiring and security system tampering. System analysts walked through router activity showing internet searches conducted from Daniel's laptop the night of the crime. Forensic techs explained the process used to extract data from the devices found at the scene and inside Daniel's abandoned SUV. Digital movement logs from his smartwatch were presented, matching step counts with time-coded garage access and sensor triggers. Prosecutors outlined the construction of the murder timeline with accuracy, tying Daniel's movements from the moment Emily entered the house to the time her body was discovered in the garage. The defense submitted a mental health, evaluation and framed the murder as a spontaneous act fueled by betrayal. They attempted to cast Daniel as emotionally destabilized and impaired at the time of the act, but the court-ordered assessment concluded that he was fully competent to stand trial and exhibited no signs of mental illness. The argument was denied. Witnesses called included forensic experts, digital analysts, investigators, and crime scene technicians. Over the course of 11 days, each detail was presented in sequence: the home surveillance files, the bypassed carbon monoxide detectors, the fuel calculations tied to the car engine, the notes written and stored in a duffel bag, the gear purchased weeks in advance, and the recorded planning logs. The jury deliberated for 13 hours. The verdict was returned: guilty on all charges. The judge delivered a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The method used, the timeline recorded, and the quiet execution of the murder through environmental manipulation left no question about intent. Daniel Dawson did not act impulsively. He acted precisely, and he acted alone. 2 weeks later, Thomas Carter stood trial. While he was not charged with the killing, his digital communications with Daniel, activity logs, and surveillance access placed him firmly within the orbit of the crime. Forensic analysts linked Carter to deleted files stored in his cloud backups. Data showed he had been aware of Daniel's monitoring system, accessed GPS links sent to him, and failed to report his knowledge even after becoming aware of the plans. Progression. Carter's defense argued that he had withdrawn from communication weeks before the murder and had not believed Daniel would follow through. But metadata and login records showed otherwise. He had viewed Emily's location updates, synced his own phone with Daniel's GPS tool, and received copies of surveillance footage. A shared spreadsheet that tracked Emily's weekly movements and time away from home was shown to have been edited by both men. The prosecution did not allege that Carter assisted in the physical act of murder. Instead, they focused on his knowledge, his passive involvement, and his refusal to act when he had the chance to prevent it. The jury returned a verdict of guilty on conspiracy and obstruction charges. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison with eligibility for parole after 10. Following sentencing, the Dawson property was transferred to state custody. Emily's daughter was placed under the care of extended family and relocated out of state. Her identity was sealed under child protection statutes. In the weeks that followed, West Haven Police issued a full summary report to the public. It detailed how the case had been solved almost entirely through the digital footprint left behind: home networks, deleted backups, motion data, search history, and cloud-based surveillance. There were no witnesses, no confessions, no visual documentation of the crime in progress, but there was enough information scattered across systems, devices, and servers to assemble an unbroken chain of events. The trial brought no dramatic courtroom scenes, no closing statements laced with emotion. The outcome was determined by code, by movement, by timestamps, and by the quiet efficiency of planning, and in the end, the evidence spoke for everyone. The case of Daniel Dawson closed without appeal. His sentence was final: life in prison, no parole, no leniency. The evidence was complete. His movements were tracked, his actions reconstructed, his planning documented across devices, locations, and time. Thomas Carter began his sentence quietly. No press interviews, no statement. His role in the case was less visible, but no less defined. His silence, his digital trail, and his coordinated surveillance with Daniel removed all reasonable doubt. The court recognized his failure to act as a factor that helped enable the crime. Emily Dawson's death did not involve confrontation. It involved control. The quiet disabling of alarms, the sealing of a garage door, the rerouting of air systems, and the pressing of a button. No screams, no evidence of a fight, only decisions made over weeks, finalized in hours, and carried out in silence. There were no second chances, No dramatic reveals, just data, logs, patterns. West Haven, a town where violent crime was rare, witnessed. A case built not on physical confrontation, but digital precision. The outcome was not determined by who was in the room, but by who had access to information, who used it and who didn't stop it, and in the end, what began with a failed marriage ended in a conviction secured by silence, surveillance, and the choices that followed.